Hey, welcome to the Relentless Positivity Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Martin, and today's going to be a memorable one. That's a dad joke you'll forget here in a little while. So my guest today is John Graham. John, thanks for being on, man. Can you tell us a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I'm a three-time USA memory champion. And so a lot of people are intrigued by what that means. A lot of questions come up like, what does that mean? What do you mean there's a championship? Are you naturally good at memory? I was not born with a naturally good memory. So 10 years ago, I read a book on memory techniques and took it to the extreme, right? And reached the top elite in the world, three-time US champion. Um, and that's cool and all. And I performed in front of 400 million people this year on a show, like performing memory feats. So I've been to the top, performed under pressure. But what a lot of people don't know is that I struggled with chronic anxiety, the mental demons, even panic attacks. And it was just really nasty. And my story is not only overcoming that, but overcoming that with a method and a route that's unconventional, because a lot of people treat things through the mind. It's labeled as mental health, mental performance, and when in fact it's an emotional root issue. So my mission these days is not just helping people perform under pressure, but how to release this stuff inside of us, because when we release this suppressed emotion inside of us, that's actually accessing our suppressed potential and helps us access more of who we really are.
That's awesome, man. And we're going to bring it back kind of the beginning. You kind of touched on a little bit. So, man, people kind of see the finished product. They see you winning all these championships, performing in front of 400 million people, but it wasn't always like that. So, kind of take us through how your panic attacks and all these anxiety and all these things kind of led to you becoming a champion and how you got through those.
Yeah, I mean, the anxiety and the panic, it was during the journey of being top in the world. Like I battled with it as I'm winning championships, as I'm training. Um, it starts off like it creeps up. Anxiety is, for me, was sneaky. It built over time where it started manifesting as like brain fog as I'm training. Like I was training for the world championships in 2019. I was excited. I was going to be elite, top of the world. I wanted to like be top 5 in the world. And I had that potential, but I would wake up and I couldn't train. I literally couldn't because my brain was just so freaking foggy. And I thought, oh, I just need a supplement. I just need to go for a walk. And it wasn't the case. It was deep, deep stress. And so I had to learn how to regulate my nervous system, but it just kept getting worse over time because I tried to confront the issue with my mind. I tried to, reframe my thoughts. I tried to visualize, emotionalize, try to pump up myself, all the things people try these days. And it was getting worse. I still had the ability mentally, but it was causing me to not be able to perform under pressure. It affected my business, affected my family. So I had to learn how to overcome it, all in the middle of being one of the best in the world. So I was kind of silently going through the struggle, not people not knowing about it.
Wow. I mean, some of us we wake up with brain fog. We may have, work might be okay. Man, that's your living, right? That's you're based on everything. It's hard to be the memory champion with brain fog. So, man, I can't imagine trying to. It's like an athlete waking up with an injury. That's kind of your version of the injury. So, you mentioned that you did some kind of counterintuitive things. What other kind of things did you do? And what? Let me start off with this. You started the conventional stuff. What led you to try these other things?
Realizing it wasn't working. And
That'll
that's
do
like,
it. Yeah.
yeah. Well, imagine having a heart attack. And at that moment, your life changes because you survive it and you go, I am never like, I need to make radical changes, not little, like completely radical. I had that moment with panic attacks where it was like, okay, clearly what I am doing is not working. And when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I started getting influences outside of me that was suggesting, and intuitively, I knew that it was a deeper issue than the mind. So I was trying, I had tried supplements I mentioned, mindset, emotionalization, visualization, therapy reframes, meditations, guided meditations, hypnosis, all this stuff, all this stuff. And it wasn't working. It doesn't get to the depth of it. And I realized it's an emotional root issue. Yes, it affects our mind, but deeper than that, it's an emotional root issue. We all have suppressed emotion and energy in our bodies. Basically, every single thing we've ever pushed away in our life, like if we had an experience when we were 5, 15, 27, doesn't matter, that we couldn't handle, like it was so intense that we pushed away, that's still inside of us. And it just builds. and it builds. And if we don't know how to feel it and release it, it just keeps piling on, and it causes all this internal distress. People call it resistance, pressure, stress, anxiety, whatever you want to label it. It's all the same root issue. And so when I learned this isn't working, let's go this route, and I was relentless with that, that's when dramatic changes started happening in my life.
Wow. And you mentioned a book that you read to kind of help with your memory work. What are some of the techniques you picked up from that book? Is that Walking with Einstein? Is that the book you read? One of them?
When Walking with Einstein, yeah, it was a book that kind of grabbed my soul at the time. I was working in a bankruptcy office doing something I didn't like in a cubicle, and I found that book, and the subtitle is The Art and Science of Remembering Everything. And people assume, oh, there's geniuses out there with photographic memories, and it's actually a myth. Like ordinary people learn techniques of the mind, like visualization, imagination, association, story, to remember massive amounts of information. So the first thing I learned to do in that book, because I was kind of skeptical, I learned how to memorize a deck of cards. It took me 6 days to learn a system. And then I sat down one day and I looked at the cards for 6.5 minutes, all 52 cards, and I memorized them in order in 6.5 minutes. And I was like, whoa, this is insane. Like, and I just kind of went, like, it interested me so much. I just kept training and training from that experience. And I signed up to compete in the world championships that year because I was another story. I sold everything I owned that year. My wife, or girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, we were traveling through Southeast Asia, and I signed up because the world championships were in China. I had my first experience testing these techniques that I learned on my own. And I sat at the table for the first event. This is a 3-day event, 10 events. It's massive. It's like a marathon. And the pressure was so intense. Like I almost got out of my chair and laughed a couple times and gave up because I was so, like, my heart was racing for 30 minutes through the whole thing, the first event. And so I had to learn, I completely bombed, and I had to learn how to overcome the pressure, not just learn these mental techniques too.
Yeah. So how did you learn to deal with the pressure? I mean, there's a lot of different ways out there. What worked for you?
Yeah, so I learned people were like studying and training in like Starbucks, or there's a two-time champ, Ron White, who was a friend of mine. He actually got like a waterproof deck of cards, and he would submerge himself underwater and like memorize underwater, and like in front of a pool of like all these kids and stuff. So like you're dealing with embarrassment and all these things going on. So I started like taking that to heart. I call it chaos training, where you make the training harder than the war or the battle, right? So I would stress myself out physically, mentally, emotionally. So what I would do is, and I still, it was a secret of mine how I won my championships. I would do 20 push-ups as fast as I could, holding my breath. I would fill up like my bladder. I would have to pee, like feel like I had to pee. I would put a podcast on my ear that I really wanted to listen to, blast it as loud as I could. And then I would sit down and try to memorize. So my heart's racing. I got to pee. I'm out of breath. I got, Joe Rogan in my ear, whatever. And I'm trying to focus. And that completely messes you up. So I had to lean into that. That's the secret to pressure, is everyone's telling you to block out your internal distractions. And that's complete nonsense, because it actually creates more resistance, because you have to understand your mind. And so if you're fighting your mind or pushing it away, it's amplifying it. And so I just let it wash over me. Same thing with emotions. And that's really the secret, is like not resisting that stuff, completely opening and letting it wash over you, as intense and uncomfortable as it is, so that you can process it out and let it flow through you instead of just getting stuck in resistance.
Wow, man, that extra pressure. That's it, man. I'm like physical pressure on your bladder. That's a huge one. I know I've had to pee and just like nothing else matters. Like that's a huge one right there. That's an interesting technique, man. So I read about this diet book one time. It's from the 70s. This guy, he wanted to lose weight really bad. He couldn't do anything. So what he did is he wrote a check to the Nazi party. And if he didn't lose 50 pounds in whatever his time frame was, he was going to send that check to the Nazi party. And he was Jewish. So he was like, it's called the blackmail diet. It's a little known book, but man, sometimes just you need a little extra outside pressure on
Isn't
yourself,
that
right?
crazy?
But
Oh yeah. Tim Ferriss did something like that too. And yeah, that donation goes in the books too. So you definitely it's one way to force yourself to do it. And it's a tool, absolutely.
Yeah. That's
Mm.
what I like to talk that you weren't naturally born for this, that you've worked at it, you use tools and trainings and techniques and all these things. So, how about this? You've won the championship 3 times. I mean, how's your training different from when you first started to now? Have you picked up things along the way that have really helped, or a lot of the same things still going?
I mean, the main thing is experience because you can watch the event as much and analyze it all you want, but to be in it and to live it is completely different. So at an advanced level, I always train with chaos, like you mentioned. Like I mentioned, it's I don't want to do it, but I force myself to do it because I know the day of the competition I'm going to feel amazing. But when you win it one time, you start just paying attention to where can I trip up? Like where are some of my weak points where I feel a little vulnerable, and you just pour more of your gasoline and attention into those. So everyone in the memory world, not everyone, but a lot of people like to train at their favorite events over and over. And I'm like, no, I need to be so well rounded. I need to be good at all the weakness. I need to find my weaknesses and get so good at them that they're covered. And so that's the main thing. I would just keep really intense notes every time whether I won a championship or not. I would sit down that night and just dump all my notes of how I felt, what I was thinking, what went wrong, what could do better, so then I can review those the next year. And that practice alone has probably helped me win because you forget.
Yeah.
I'm a memory guy. And if I can look at my notes from last year, I'm like, take it puts myself in that seat again. I'm like, oh yeah, I need to be aware of this little thing. Right. Even like something like being aware of people's noises in the audience or the the host like talking over you or talking while you're memorizing. Those things make the hugest difference.
Man, if you're listening right now, that's a huge nugget for I don't care what you're trying to do. If you can kind of create that blueprint and you can figure out what went right, what went wrong, because we forget so much. I mean,
Yeah.
for a ridiculous instance, I'm on Facebook and like I'll go through my Facebook memory sometimes, like I don't even remember that. It was like something 6 years ago, some big event in my life. Like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So things like that. So I'm a fitness guy. So people have them keep food logs and they were like, oh, once I started tracking it, things changed. So people forget things so easily. So even the memory guy forgets. So you
Even the
start
memory
tracking
guy
those
forgets.
things.
Yeah,
So,
because you got to keep track. Otherwise, you make the same mistakes over and over.
yeah,
You'll make that mistake over and over until you learn from it. So
yeah,
why not close that loop quicker?
yeah. That's a great tip right there. You got to take notes. Take this show. Take notes if you're driving. Just talk to your phone. But
Yeah.
hey, let's take me through the champ. Take me through a few of the events. What are these kind of events that you're tested on?
Yeah, so the championship is a 12 people qualify and it's an on-stage event. So it's meaning it's elimination style. First event is words. We get 15 minutes to memorize a list of random words in order. So then we go on stage and each person says the next word, right? And if you make 2 mistakes, you're out. So you have to know the words in order. And we're going like sometimes up to 100 words in a row, sometimes more. Couple people are eliminated. Then we do a long-term memory event, which means we have 1 month ahead of time to memorize thousands of data bits, like full periodic table, like all the data of the periodic table, discover, year discovered, atomic weight, all that stuff. WWE wrestlers and stats, like all this
Oh,
crazy
I was getting worried, but now I can get with that one. The rest of them, periodic table, no wrestlers. I might be able to do something.
NASA, just yeah, it's like all this random stuff, and we're quizzed on it.
Oh,
And then the third event is what's called Tea Party. It's basically meeting guests and learning all about them. So they'll say their first, middle, last name, their phone number, where they're from, all this information about themselves, like 40 data bits about themselves, and there's 6 people, and we have to memorize that. Like first only verbally. We can't look at anything, we just hear it, and then we can review it. So again, that's really intense. It's all on stage, by the way, in front of people. Like
oh,
now it's televised or online. And the final event is a double deck of cards, meaning there's 3 people left. They shuffle 2 decks of cards together, so 104 cards on your table. You got 5 minutes to memorize the order, all of those. And then everyone, once those 5 minutes are up, each person says the next card, like takes turns. 1 mistake, you're out.
oh.
So it's last person standing.
So much pressure,
A lot of pressure. Yeah, 1 mistake and you're out. That's intense. So
man. I want to go back to the Tea Party one. So I know there's people out here right now like me, like I'm shaking someone's hand. I've already forgot their name.
yeah.
What are the techniques you use for some of those data bits on? I mean, not even just phone numbers, just names. How are you good with? How do you do that with the names?
Yeah, well, like you said, just hearing the name is the biggest problem for people. Because if you're shaking someone's hand, you don't know, like you've already lost, right? It doesn't matter
Yeah.
if you got an amazing memories if you didn't hear it. So being present, and if you're in that situation, like ask someone to say their name over, like, hey, what was your name again? How do you spell it? Like people want to hear that. It gives you another chance, but really you want to make an association. This is like bread and butter for all memory techniques. So Joe, right? When I hear Joe, anyone listening, what do you think of when you hear the word Joe? Do you think of a sloppy Joe? Do you think of a neighbor named Joe? Do you think of like someone you went to high school named Joe? Do you think of average Joe? What do you comes to your mind first? And then utilize that and connect it to this Joe, bald, beard, blue eyes, like put attach that association to something. Like maybe I imagine sloppy Joe in your beard, right? Like, or sloppy Joe dumped on your bald head, right? Something like that to connect it. That way you store that imagery somewhere and can remember it.
Oh, that's awesome. Now everyone in my audience is going to pick. And I'll eat sloppy joes too. So man, I picture it, my beard, my head, all that. You'll never forget my name that way for
You'll
sure.
never. Well, mine's better because it's John. A lot of people think of like a toilet, right? So I beat you there.
So looking back through kind of all the championships you've been through, what's kind of some things that stand out, like memorable moments? And that's not a pun or anything. That's just
Well, the very first time I won, it felt normal to me. So here's the key, and I'm careful to share this information because a lot of people are big into manifestation these days. I've got to my opinion has changed on this, but before I won my first one, I wanted it so bad. And every single night, basically every single night, I would listen to the same song. It was a Foo Fighters song. It lit me up. It was a song that built up slowly. And as I'm listening to that song, my eyes are closed, my hands on my heart, and I'm visualizing and feeling the tournament, the each event going well and succeeding and getting happy, like feeling good and amazing in that event. And I did that over and over and over, feeling the trophy in my hand, feeling the joy, right? So when I won, I'm at MIT, I won the championship, and I had to sort of pinch myself because in that moment, I wasn't ecstatically excited like you would think. It felt normal.
just another
Like,
day.
oh, I should be winning this, right? And that's really what you want to be. You don't want it to be a shock to your system. Like you want it to feel so normal that like it's already yours. And that's one of the most memorable moments is the first time I won. It was like, oh, I won. Okay, cool. I better go on stage and accept my award. It was like wild.
That's cool, man. Because you've been there before. I mean, they've done studies on that. It feels the same. We
Feels the
really
same.
locked in like that. So that's awesome, man. You just
If you're
picture like,
performing in anything, yeah, you want to rehearse it in your mind, that mental performance. And the most important thing isn't the mental part, it's the feeling. You want to feel it. You want to feel the emotion of it, like the excitement of it.
yeah, I
And
know a lot of coaches will take their players out on the football field before the game, let them feel the grass and be in the court on a basketball court. What does this court look like? And walk and
right,
let's look at this. And so it's not your first time. So you're like what you talk. Well, you're not just shocked at all the lights and everything. For you've been there before.
yeah, I mean, I would do that too. I would Google search the venue and like look at all the pictures of inside if I hadn't been to that building before and just like imagine I'm in that building. So when I'm there, I also normalize that, but I took it to that extreme of you want to feel it and visualize it over and over so it feels normal and comfortable for sure.
Yeah. So I'm just picturing you with the family. Do you use your memory techniques just in everyday life?
Yes and no. You would be surprised that I don't use it as much as people would think. Because a lot of what I do is not practical. Like the cards and numbers isn't practical, right? Names and information is, or remembering something you're learning, right? And I definitely utilize that. Um, but not as much as you think. The most important thing that it's trained me is just to be present. I'm so sharp and so present with my friends and family that I remember things naturally that way, if
I'm
that
just
makes sense.
picturing you creating a memory palace when you go to the grocery store. Like, okay, this is over here.
And a lot of people have those preconceived notions. Yeah, they think, I don't memorize my grocery list. I don't memorize phone numbers because the phone does that. So I utilize it mostly for people and information of conversation or things I'm learning in a book.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, a lot of that, what you mentioned, just being present. I think a lot, especially with, cell phones and all the distractions we have in life, just being present, that's almost a superpower these days.
Very much. Yeah. And I'll say this about being present because everyone, it's a very important, popular topic these days is the present moment is not all sunshine and rainbows. Being present doesn't mean you're in bliss or calm. In fact, you shouldn't be forcing yourself to feel a certain way when you're present. When you're present, it means you're immersed in what is. So if I'm present right now and I feel uncomfortable, I'm present with that feeling. Like, and that's really important for not just for processing this stuff out, but like overcoming certain mental things instead of resisting life. So people listening, don't force yourself into feeling calm. Don't force yourself into feeling peaceful. Just being present means you're present with what is, and that's a superpower.
For sure. Yeah. I think a lot of people, when they do run from, awkward things or painful things, that's when a lot of the addictions come in, things like that, where they're just trying to
Yeah.
avoid it and not deal with it in the moment. But hey, man, life's sometimes hard. You got to work your way through. You can't run from your problems.
Yeah, that's a huge point. It's hard for everyone, and we're all addicted to something. Like it's porn, it's food, it's video games, it's phone. It can also be work. That was
Yeah.
my addiction was achievement and busyness and work. Optimizing like productivity. That was my drug of choice, addiction, because I was kept myself so busy in my mind that I was avoiding all the stuff inside of me, that resistance that built. So everyone listening, it's completely normal to have a vice to chant because what you're doing is you're not able to handle the edge, the energy inside of you that you distract yourself with something else. Whether it's listening to a podcast because you don't feel good or, overeating or whatever, it's meaning you can't handle life. And so everyone's dealing with uncomfortability. Lean into that, let it process, get comfortable with that uncomfortable because then it can process out. Then you won't feel the need and the urge to always like habitually do something you don't want to do. So you're not going to mentally force yourself out of an addiction. It doesn't work. It never works. You have to feel all that edge that's arising, fully experience it over and over, process it out so that you naturally are called to higher decisions and better behaviors.
Oh, that's awesome. Otherwise, it just kind of bubbles back up to the surface. If you push it down, it's going to come back up for sure. So, man, I know you're a proud dad, and you love your daughters and your wife very much. But what are some things you want to instill into your daughters through your journey through these memory championships and all you've overcome? What do you want to instill in them?
Beautiful. It's so important as a parent to embody the traits that you want them to take on, meaning you should be those things. Like I shouldn't say it that way. You embody those qualities. So if I want them to be of integrity and grounded and honest and all those things, I need to be those things in front of them. And a lot of people think, oh, you're going to teach your girls memory techniques. They're going to be memory champions. Maybe, I want them to be who they are. I want them to follow their own path, and I'm going to be behind them, supporting them in that journey. But if I can embody this ability to handle life, what I just shared, like especially emotions. Okay, let's talk emotions for a second. My daughters, well, here's what typically happens if a kid's melting down or having a rough moment. We either think of that as a burden, like that feels so intense to us, seeing them screaming or upset, that we tell them to stop, like cut it out. Option B is we help them to feel better immediately. We distract them from that feeling. Both of those options aren't the highest thing you can do for your child or yourself. So telling it to stop or distracting and feeling better, those are two ways that bypass that energy. So instead, you just want to be there for them or for yourself. Like let that emotion fully process, as uncomfortable as it is. Be there for them, hold them, let them process that out. That's something that I'm all in on because I know that's what's changed my life, helped me overcome anxiety, is to be there for myself to process my own emotions, but now for my daughters. Because if I give them that ability, like your emotions are not a bad thing. Don't distract yourself from them. Don't suppress them. You be with them because you're a human being. that alone will give them tremendous resilience in life, because they're not going to battle with as much inner demon and as much resistance as people who are conditioned to stop it or feel better, like distract yourself from that feeling. So that's one thing that I'm really highly prioritizing for
That's
myself
awesome.
and for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you're a parent, take notes on that one, man. That's amazing right there. I think it's kind of beyond the conventional advice we get that we just kind of people want them to get, like you said, hey, oh, here's a lollipop, quit that, or just get you out of the grocery store as quick as possible if you're throwing a fit. So
Yeah.
I've been guilty of that before, man. My son was throwing a fit at the grocery store one time. I was like, I just hustled him out of there rather than just dealing with it in the moment.
We all do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're conditioned that way. It's societal, it's parent, it's upbringing, and no one to blame here, but it's just the way we're taught. But there's always a better way to do that.
That's right, man. This is awesome, and you're helping people be able to do this stuff. This high performance type stuff. That's your jam right there. How can people work with you if they want some help with that?
Yeah. So I do a program where I teach people this process of releasing suppressed emotions, which access your suppressed potential, allow you to expand to higher realms of potential naturally instead of forcing yourself to do it through the mind. And you can go to releasepanic.com to read over that program. You can also go to releasepanic.com/free. There's a free guide that just kind of jumpstarts you in it on your own. You can see for yourself what it's about. But yeah, I'm also on Instagram at Memory John G. So if you want one-on-one coaching from me for memory or peak potential, you can reach out, ask me anything.
That's awesome, man. You gave some great nuggets in here. I can't imagine what's in the training that you get on there. Someone's got to go there. Go get that out. I'm going to link that in show notes. You can just click on it. You're not a memory champ yet. You can't memorize all that. Just go click it in the links. It'll be on show notes right there. John, this is amazing, man. I got so many tips that I'm going to use myself. I'm helping my son memorize some stuff for the Air Force right now. So this will be very helpful. I'm going to help him with that. So it was good, man. Like you said, you don't have to be a natural champion. There's tips, strategies, training, techniques you can do to help you get to where you need to be.
100%. Anyone can do this. Yeah.
That's awesome. Hey, if you're listening right now, please share this with somebody. They need to hear about what John's doing out there. Maybe they need to work with John, something like that. They have those repressed emotions and anxiety that he can help get them out of there. The stuff that hadn't worked, if they've tried everything else, why not try something that worked for him, work for other people, give it. So share this message out there. And John, keep doing what you're doing, man. We need more people out there changing the world.
Same with you, man. Appreciate you, Joe. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week on the Relentless Positivity Podcast.